Welcome everyone to Voice of Terminus Tavern Talk on Tuesdays, episode number 9. And I'm joined today by Kodiak. Say hello, Kodiak.
Good afternoon.
Say hello, Lex.
What's up, people?
Dow couldn't be with us again this week. He's pretty busy and preoccupied with work and everything, so you're stuck with us three again. Today's topics, obviously, we're going to be covering VR and Pantheon news. Then we'll be talking about the newsletter that just recently came out. Our forum hot topics will be spellbook drops and proposal for unique mobs. And the latest screenshots, obviously. So let's go and kick it off with the VR news. Lex, you want to go and head it off?
All right. One of our first tweets this week was from Pantheon MMO. You have just escaped the guards and arrived at a small village out of town. What do you do now? And they show you a pretty nifty screenshot there, too.
Yep.
Eric Johansson says, use my Hearthstone to teleport back to safety. Of course. Thomas Bell says, throw up a 20-foot radius slow and dispel magic ward, light a fire, and drink till I fall asleep. Strieg says, stay close to someone slow so I can outrun them if there's trouble. Some fool named Lexer says, I'd use the corpses of my enemies as insulation and food. Wait a minute. Yes. Whoops. I hit the wrong thing and lost my place. Oh well. James Bennett says, quickly identify the weakest in the group, build a fire with a spit long enough to cook said member, and cackle manically. Valencia says, shaman cleanse the land if it's a ruined grave site. Don't want poltergeists again. Can't afford to have the cleric sucked into the TV. TK says, I would create a second account so I wasn't there alone. But in the end, he'd still be just talking to himself. Bard King says, steal a torch, light some stuff ablaze, get warm by the fire. Sind says, I tell people on chat I saw a named walk by with a flaming sword. 2 minutes later, 50 people filled the zone. Jamie says, that's a huddle and drink location, if ever I did see one. Caesar says, I will send my partner to explore the place while I watch Hidden in the Dark.
Not to butt in, but I just realised that these tweets are from
last week.
Last week, dude. Why it didn't save the new ones? Anyway,
That's
fine. So we'll kind of butt off of this. So we actually messed up the tweets here. For some unknown reason, the program didn't save the latest tweets for that. So that's a screenshot you guys see. As Pantheon already said, guards arrive at a small village out of town. What do you do now? So what would you guys do to
Kill them
finish them
all!
off?
Kill them all! There's got to be something good to loot in that village.
Call for reinforcements, because, there must be a reason why you're there.
Yeah. So that's a screenshot basically that came with that tweet. Unfortunately, we didn't have the actual tweets for that. We apologise. So we'll move on to the next one. Pantheon also tweeted out, if you could ask the Pantheon community one question, what would it be and why? There's actually a forum post where we can place our questions, what we would ask the community. So guys, if you could ask the community one question, what would it be and why? We'll start with you, Kodiak.
Oh, wow. Question. I don't know. Come back to me.
All right, we'll move on to Lex then.
I would ask them, so what are you wearing? Because, I'm kind of creepy that way.
Okay.
And you got to keep things lighthearted.
Yep. You got one, Kodiak?
Not really. I don't know.
Need more time to think on it. Yeah, it's the same with me. All right, so Kodiak, do you want to move on to the next part?
Yeah, let's see. Pantheon MMO also tweeted, should MMOs limit the membership size of guilds? We had 26% say yes, 53% say no, and 21% say maybe.
Yep.
And I think that they should limit. I don't know, that's just my personal thing.
Okay. What about you, Lex?
I'm a big fan of no obvious limitations. Like if you tell me something is a limitation, even if I know I'll never hit it. Say I'm a small guild, just friends and family, and there's a 255 limit. Well, that makes me focus on something that's negative, a limitation. Where, what are the chances of a large guild like that ever happening? Granted, you've got big guilds like, the Old Timers Guild and stuff like that who have thousands of people. So you do need to facilitate them. But at the same time, facilitating them is a good thing for the little guys because you're not going, by the way, you were going to stop you here. Mm-hmm. If they do this in stages, like, say, once you hit 25 members and your guild gets upgraded in status or something to increase the cap, fine. Because then you're just saying it's kind of a soft cap.
And I would like to see some type of a alliance system implemented, a good alliance system, not multi guilding or whatever, but like an alliance system where you can still chat with other. So basically, you can be in a small guild but still feel like you're in a big guild.
Yeah, you can have your small group of close family and friends, but still contribute to the larger organization.
Well, on that note, Kodiak, you'll actually get an answer onto that question what you just mentioned with the Guild Alliance, because it was actually one of the questions that was asked for the newsletter. So and they have an answer there for that. So we'll go through that right now. Actually, I'll go and bring up the newsletter. So Pantheon released the October newsletter a couple of days ago. We're not going to jump into it all. But what we're going to go and highlight in this newsletter is basically the VIP Q&A. The VIPs got to ask VR some questions, and they picked the top 10, I think it was. We're going to go and run through the questions that relate to news towards the game, etc. That we're all eager to learn about what they're going to be doing for the game, what kind of mechanics, etc. So we'll shoot it off with the first question that was put in by Pants. Is there any desire to create a raid boss in Pantheon with the intention of it going down in history as one of the top extremely difficult MMORPG fights? Chris Perkins, creative director, answered this question. That would be a blast to create and a legacy I think everyone on this team would be proud of. We are making a challenging group-centric game as its core. A relentlessly difficult history-making raid boss as a part of our legacy makes great sense. Editor's note, based on the first few boss encounters we've tested, they are well on their way to that goal. Has anybody here seen our corpse? That's kind of interesting. That they're approaching it this way, trying to make it difficult and entertaining at the same time.
I think the only way to really do that is to make it a dynamic encounter. If it's a static encounter, it's going to get boring. Doesn't matter how many hit points it has or how many people it takes to take down. If it's the same all 10 times you try it, then it'll never be epic, right? So it should change every time you go into it. It should be basically like a new encounter.
Right, because let's face it, with most games out there right now, granted, they have some very, very good fights. Guild Wars 2's got one where this giant dragon comes out and, it's like, oh my god, the first time. And repetition kills entertainment.
Yeah.
Change it a little bit and then it's epic every time.
Alright, so let's move on to the next question. That was by Amsai. Are support roles, buffs, debuffs, and out-of-combat utility meant to be shared with other roles like CC support, DPS support, healing support? Corin Lefevre, senior game designer, answered this question. Most classes will likely end up with some form of support that they provide, as long as it fits the core concepts and premise of the class without encroaching too heavily on another class's role. Some easy examples would be a Dire Lord or Necromancer, still projected as post-launch, being able to siphon stats off of enemies to provide a temporary buff to their group, or a Summoner providing a conjured stone to their party that can be consumed to restore a small amount of mana to the user. It's very important that each class retain their identity, so we'll be eyeing overlap carefully.
That's very good to hear. I mean, the one thing that always concerned me is overlap. Because if you overlap too much, you're basically invalidating another class. Every class needs to be valid in one way or another. They need to be useful. They need to, and I'm not just talking in certain situations, I'm talking every situation. Solo, small group, big group raids, all of it. They need to have some kind of relevance. So the fact that, they've got some ideas flowing there that, yeah, there's going to be a little overlap, of course. So maybe let's look at, wow, Shaman can Hex. That's CC. Mage can Hex. Mage's Hex is a little better in some respects. Shaman's better in some other respects, and there's other ones. But the fact of the matter is, you know who to go to if you need some serious CC, instead of just going, oh, wow, they're good enough. They do the same thing. So it makes me very hopeful. And it doesn't make me worry so much about overlap, but I'm glad there is going to be just a slight bit of overlap so that everyone isn't stuck in rigid roles.
Okay, you got anything to add to that, Kodiak?
No, I mean, I think we've beaten the whole, multi-classing thing to a whore,
Yeah.
But, yeah, I don't think that every class should be distinct and have an ability that's special to that particular class, and that's what I like.
Good. Right, so the next question, obviously, there's a question in between, but we're going to try and approach all the questions related to game-related news. So, Obliquity says, what will you do to keep starting cities from becoming ghost towns? And Chris Perkins answers this one again. We aren't ready to reveal all the answers to this question yet, but for now, the keywords would be coded alliteratively. Content. There will be meaningful adventuring content, including dungeons for a variety of level ranges within the walls of starting major cities. Crafting. Certain aspects of crafting and trade skill progression will only be possible in starting major cities. Character. Certain aspects of character development related to the perception system will only be possible in starting major cities. And the last one is chance. We intend for events, discoveries and quests to exist dynamically within starting major cities in hopes that players will feel a consistent incentive to visit them whenever they are nearby for the chance of stumbling upon something exciting. So that definitely sounds interesting.
Yeah. So basically what I get out of that is, even if you're low, mid, or high level, you should go back to your starting area because you never know what's going to be waiting for you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
And I mean, that could be actually overlapped into every zone. And then you're no zone is irrelevant now because I need to go back to see if something triggers my perception.
Well, that, and if every starting city is a little different, you may want to use the progeny system to roll another race or another class or something else, so that the experience and the adventure might be totally different from one class to another or one race to another, which might be pretty cool.
Yeah,
and it kind of shows. Go on, Lex.
Go ahead.
No, go on, Lex.
No, you go ahead.
All right.
Go ahead.
It kind of shows as well, like the perception system. I can see this being very important as well. For sure. And the interesting thing as well is having a variety of level ranges, including dungeons, a variety of level ranges within the walls of a starting city. So you're obviously going to have sewers, backyards or whatever you want to call it, within the starting cities as well, where you can go and venture.
Which is good. I mean, one of the best newbie experiences I've ever had in the game was with Anarchy Online, where you do spawn in used to spawn in your typical newbie yard, is what it was called. But there was actually like 3 or 4 that you could go to. And they were all similar, but a little different. And it really gave you the illusion of choice and options of experience, when honestly, if you step back and look at it, they were all pretty much the same. You just didn't feel it.
Kay Quellum says as well, would you be able to interact in those events in the starting city of another race if you gain positive faction? Interesting question as well.
That could be.
I would like to see like back entryways, like the sewers, or behind a Freeport, how the evils can sneak into Freeport, stuff like that. So it doesn't matter. Then you can assemble a group, let's say in the hidden shadows, and then go into that little area and fight as a group. But you just can't go walking through the main gates because you're evil. Yeah.
Alright, so we'll move on to the next one. And the next one's from Pariah. Will each class have their own unique main quest line to follow? Corey answers this. There will be class-specific content to experience if you choose so. if you so choose. But Pantheon is largely going to be off rails. You'll have the opportunity to delve into the history of your class and how it relates to Terminus. But I hesitate to say there will be a main quest. Most of the class-specific quests are likely to be episodic. The closest we may approach a main quest path would be for epic class-specific items, which I can kind of relate to. I think that's actually the best approach to go for. Have your quest, have your class specific content be episodic, so in small episodes every 7 levels or 10 levels or whatever, you can go and choose to do something class specific. And main storyline with the epic, I kind of like to see a nice build up going through the lore, the story, etc. That's building up to this main event for your epic quest.
Yeah, we kind of talked on that when we were talking a few weeks ago about Epic having you do a little bit at level 10, and you do a little bit at level 20 and level 30, and it basically, or you can wait till level 50 and do it all in one shot. But there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to do a little bit at a time as you grow and progress your own character too.
Yep.
Yeah, I actually think that's a very, very smart idea, because you can taper quests. I mean, you could do episodic quests throughout on everything. So, say you start a quest where it's, save a girl from a burning building. Well, the next 5 levels, you don't really get anything, but then, you hit level 10 or something, and because you've done this quest, you hit episode 2 of it, which is the next stage, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, now, you got to help us find a new place to build or something, just as an example. So this allows you to be able to do multiple quest lines that are very, very long, but because they're tapered, it's like taking steps back and forth between the quests, and it keeps you interested because your story is not the same thing over and over again. Like, oh, okay, I got to go to my guild's guildmaster or whatever, and just do this quest. Oh, now we got to do this for him, because then it starts to feel like a FedEx quest.
Yeah.
But tapering it off means, oh, now these people need me to help them again. Okay, well, I help them. Oh, well, now the city guard needs me to do something because I helped them do this. I think it's a very smart idea.
Yeah. Dark Soul Omega says it best, progressive epic quest.
Mm-hmm.
It progresses over time. So we'll move on to the next one, which is then from Drac436, and this is concerning you, Cody. It's something that's been on your mind for quite some time. Will guilds be able to form alliances for social functions, like alliance chat for coordination? Chris answers this. As a challenging, group-centric and socially driven game, guilds will play a massively iconic role in our player culture and gameplay experience. As such, we will work hard to ensure guilds have robust tools and functionality to form, expand, communicate and cooperate. Guild alliances, and now this is the interesting part, and guild warfare will be realities. And we will have the social tools in place to make these two facets of our guild system enjoyable.
Perfect.
Awesome. So the guild warfare, definitely a very interesting idea behind it. I can't wait to hear more on that idea, what they have planned for that. Obviously, it's nothing new for PvPers, but on a PvE server, I would like to know how something like that would work, for sure.
Yeah, I'm not much of a PvPer myself, but the guild warfare thing does sound very interesting. I mean, if they do it right, it could pull people who aren't that excited about PvP to give it a try again or for the first time. But I'm probably more excited the fact that they do have plans to help bring guilds together rather than just people.
Yeah, definitely. Kodiak, anything to add?
No, that's perfect. That's what I want to see. I want to see guilds working together to, as I said, let's say they cap the guilds at 100 members, whatever, right? And then they have a mob that needs 500 people to kill it. That means 5 guilds have to get together to kill it. I mean, that's what I want to see. I want to see guilds work, not just, I belong to this guild and I don't talk to anybody but whoever's in my guild and whatever. No, you have to go out and talk to other people that aren't in your guild.
Yeah. So move on to the next one. And this one is from Renfields. I'm slaughtering all these names today. So, how much weather will be in the game? can we expect to see passing thunder, snow, rainstorms with multiple levels of severity? Can passing druids affect that weather? Can I watch druids conduct weather battles and dances? I like the idea of weather-specific spells for druids as well as other classes. Summoners can't summon fiery things in a snowstorm, etc. Can we expect to see that? Daniel Kren, Chief Technical Officer and Lead Programmer, answers this question. People experience several weather conditions in Terminus. You can expect to see rainstorms with lightning and thunder as well as snow in some areas. Druids will have a degree of interaction with the weather, but we can't talk specifics right now. So it's kind of what we were talking about on and off our shows about having certain classes interact with the weather, and obviously the weather in general that's going to play an impact. Last week we showed off that picture that was part of a tweet from Pantheon about the weather effects and how they want to approach it and make it look even more epic. So it's definitely very cool to hear that. Anything to add, guys?
Well, yeah, it does kind of fit. It does fit my idyllic look at a druid. I mean, I blame EverQuest. That's what I see in a druid. You know, very tree huggy, very nature-esque, almost hippie-ish, but they can do stuff with the weather. I think they've got a lot of room here to really make a druid super dynamic, especially when it comes to how they interact with the weather. Mm-hmm. Maybe they can turn it into a weapon. Maybe, I mean, who knows? That makes me sit there and go, you know what? Maybe druids aren't so boring after all. Maybe I might roll one as an alt.
If you think about it, right, just picture this, the following. You know, your group's getting attacked by a bunch of monsters. They're coming at you from every area. And all of a sudden, you've got a druid in a group, and he interacts with the weather. Unlike similar to the cleric has that shield that he can put down, that wall shield and everything. The druid interacts with the weather and makes it flood. That wipes away all those monsters to the side. Or, you know, a storm comes up and the wind blows them away. Kind of cool, huh?
A tornado or something. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, think about it. If you're in a guild out in the open, and it's like, druid channels something, makes it rain, and boom, lightning hits your mob and it stuns them or damages them or something. I'd sit there and be like, oh my god, do it again!
Yep, do it again, yes, exactly. Definitely interesting. Maybe something to speculate on in one of our shows, how a druid can affect the weather, interact with it. So the next question is from Vezem. Will players be able to add their own stat points each level, or will they be designated depending on race class? And this is kind of something we talked about, I think, last week or a few weeks ago. And the answer is from Daniel. This is yet to be determined, Resin, but I believe we may go with a system that allows players to allocate bonus attributes every 5 levels. It's something we kind of talked about as well, how to spend your points and when to spend your points, etc. So it looks like they're going to be going for every 5 levels is where you would place attributes into your stat tree.
I like that. That's more classic D&D type stuff, so that's good.
Yep, yeah. That makes me happy.
Yep, definitely. And the last question, random one. Will Pantheon require linear progression, keying attunement to access content, i.e., is this in the design plan for today, tomorrow? Justin Gearhart, lead writer, answers this question. There's some nuances to keying and attunement that the designing team will have final say on. But the short answer is yes. Keying will be necessary to access a place like the 7 locked door, for instance, or at least progressing through it. The scope and scale of those keys or attunements have yet to be determined, but Pantheon will have them as of today.
I like that too. Yep. Just like what Dow said, you be able to earn it. The minute that they start giving it to everybody is the minute that it's no longer like, hey, I worked for something, I earned it, this is what I get to do. You know?
Exactly.
Makes it. So.
Right, so we've covered that. And we've gone through the newsletter. Now we're going to the forum hot topics. And the first one will be spell book drops. I'll bring that up right now. So, this was posted by Strider Vidal. Sorry for slaughtering all the names. He posted in the forums, I played a lot of EQOA for years and I was not hugely into EQ2, only casually, but one thing both games had that I thought was great were spellbook drops. I like the idea that you could have a spell no one even 10 levels higher than you had yet because you farmed the crap out of a spot for the ability. Also spell upgrade books for current spells. The best example of this is to say a Necro has a pet Grim Reaper. You could farm some camp in a deep dark dungeon for a month and if very lucky get a spell that upgraded that Grim Reaper to a more powerful version. Excuse me, like a Death Reaper or something. I feel like having these types of spells not only gives a great incentive to farming camps, but really helps make up for the gear is everything or raids are everything idea that I was just reading about in another topic on here. So say you have a few pieces of gear that are better on your Necro than mine, I could potentially be just as powerful if not more because I farmed the book for that more powerful pet. This in my opinion would make the XP camps just as viable endgame as an open world raid boss being camped. So what's your thoughts guys on spellbook drops? I know I read it carries on down here basically in EverQuest that you had runes and stuff that you would be able to gather and change in for spells, etc. So what's your take?
Yeah, you would take them to your guild master, and he had a random chance of kicking you back a spell. So you may have to turn in 10 ruins to get the one spell you want because they give you duplicates of the same spell over and over and over again. It was kind of a pain in the butt, but at least it kept you out there farming. So it had some good things to it too.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. The one thing, like I'm an older man now. I can't stay up till 5 a.m. farming crap anymore. So it taking months doesn't really appeal to me. I can see it maybe taking a week. Sure, yeah, that's fine, off and on. Or maybe even 2. Past that, It's probably something where I wouldn't even bother with it because it's like, if I get it and I'm in the area, great. If not, oh well. But,
I agree with that.
But I do like the concept because there are certain things that, it's just the prestige of having them where you're like, oh my God, where did you get this? What does it do? And how do I get one?
See, and I like the thing that if they actually implement something where, some spells will be vendor sold, some spells will be dropped, some spells will be, earned. You know what I'm saying? So that way you have different ways of obtaining those spells.
Yeah, it's kind of what we talked about, different ways to do it. So a good mix of a good variety of how you can get a certain spell. I wouldn't mind if I would have to go and get a spell from, doing a quest as an example, or get a spell from a drop item, or getting a spell from a certain NPC that I have to go and venture out and find, etc., or go to a crafter. I don't mind all 4 variations of how I get my spells. It all depends obviously what kind of spell it is, etc. Special spells, higher level end level spells per se. I would like to see a variety, to be honest. Spells.
Well, as I'm saying, so people that do have more time that can go out and farm those little ruins or whatever, then that helps the economy because now they're selling the ruins because I don't have time. I'm just going to go buy the ruins and hope I get a turn in. I'm going to farm what I can while the time that I have to farm and get the gold, the plat or whatever and buy the ruins. You know what I'm saying? So there's other ways to obtain those ruins besides farming them over and over and over again.
Options are the spice of life. I mean, so if there's multiple ways to obtain these spells, that's only going to benefit us. It's just they just have to balance very, very fine balance of effort versus reward.
Exactly. The risk and reward, exactly. If you're going to go out there and spend the time putting yourself in danger, and I can just go around and go to a crafter, it makes no sense that it's going to be, hey, I just go to a crafter and say, hey, go build me this spell. It's going to have to cost me dear. Because I'm not going and putting in the effort or the time to go and camp a certain area or put myself with the group in danger and spend time farming it. So obviously the risk versus reward has to be balanced. The good thing about the spell drop idea, like it was said further on in this post, was like in EverQuest. I don't know how it was in other games, but when a master spell dropped, it wasn't bound to your character. It was free for all. So you could go and take that if nobody's in your group that that could use that spell. You could go and then sell it. So it basically helps with the player economy as well. It kind of brings people together as well. If they keep it unbounded to your character or unbounded to the group when somebody loots it.
See, and I think that according to the codex, by interchanging those seals and ruins and stuff, it's going to determine, like how you had your Adept 1, your Adept 3, and your Master, and all those different variations of spells in EQ2. I think those ruins are what's going to signify the intensity of those spells. So I kind of like that aspect. But as far as obtaining those spells, I think that it should be different ways to obtain them, whether you get it from a vendor, whether they're craft, whether you have to farm it, whether you have to talk to somebody, quest for it, stuff like that. Because like I said, the minute that they just, like when they introduced POK and you could go to your vendor and buy every spell, there was no reason to go to the Oasis to get these spells. There was no reason to go to Everfrost to get these spells. Like, you had to travel to go get your different types of spells, and I like that.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's definitely got to be spread out. I'm not fond of dinging and then boom, I get 3 new spells this level. I ding again, I get 1 new spell. I ding again, I get another spell, etc. Yeah. I'm no fan of that. I'm no fan of running to my standard class trainer and going, hey, what spells you got for me? Let me go and buy them all quickly. Boom, boom, boom. I'm not a fan of that. I want to earn my stuff. I want to go out and venture. I want to challenge. I want different ways to obtain my spells. I'm not fond of the typical approach that we do nowadays anymore.
I'd be all for doing like smaller quests to get new spell lines. Whereas with existing spell lines, like say you get a damage over time or a nuke. When you're learning it for the first time, maybe you got to go through like a 5, 10, 15-minute little quest line to be like, oh, you learned how to do it. So you kind of feel like I've earned the right to be able to do this.
Yeah.
It's...
And you know how to properly
kind of like
use
anything in life.
And conjure it and all that other things, yeah.
Right, it's like anything in life. If you just learned how to play the guitar, you'd find pretty fast that it doesn't give you a rewarding feeling. Whereas if you spend the time to learn how to play a guitar, you really appreciate the fact that you're playing this instrument. It's the same thing in theory with the magic and stuff.
Yeah. I'd love to basically, get my spell, whatever way I've got it, and then have to go and learn this spell while I use it. And at the first couple of tries, it might fizzle. It might not even heal you. It might not be effective or whatnot. And over time, I become more secure with it. My stats have gone up that relate to that spell that help me understand it and everything, and it grows with me.
Okay, what if each spell had its own proficiency, right? So it had its own fizzle rate. So the more you casted it, the less chance of a fizzle. Instead of your conjuration or evocation or whatever dictating your fizzle rate, what if it was a proficiency with that particular spell? So an older version of that spell would be anyway, I don't know how to say it, but you know what I'm getting at?
Yeah.
Like each spell, the first 5 times you're gonna fizzle. Doesn't matter. I don't care what your evocation is or your conjuration or whatever, right? Until you casted it like dozen times perfectly, then I don't know.
Right, it scales up.
Comparing two types of spells, even though they're of the same subclass, like conjuration, it doesn't mean like summoning an air elemental is the exact same experience as summoning an earth elemental. Technically, if you wanted to role play, it would be entirely different methods. I mean, contact in the plane of air. Well, I'm pretty sure they'd have a different way of doing things than the plane of earth. So it would make sense that I have to familiarize myself with summoning earth elementals before I can become good at summoning.
Exactly. I mean, it's like
just something that
Well, it's with your weapons as well. When you first start off, bashing down a monster with your crushing or piercing or whatever weapon, the first times you might miss. And as you keep on bashing it, your skill starts going up. You get better. You learn how to use that weapon.
It's not even that. When you pick up a new blunt weapon, right? It takes you a minute for you to get familiar with the balance, the weight, the this, whatever. So you shouldn't just be able, just because you have maxed out a blunt weapon, just be able to pick up that weapon and use it perfectly. No,
it's just like picking up a rubber mallet and then picking up a hammer, then picking up a carpenter's hammer. they're technically the same thing. You hit things with it. Not very hard to use, but they all handle differently, and you have to get used to it. Trust me, my thumbs know this.
That's why, they should, if it's like that with weapons, it should be like that with spells. I mean, yes, I can understand people that are going to go, well, if my spell is not going to work the first 150 times or whatever, decently, fairly decently. It's just an example. I can feel people get...
The first 10 mobs that you kill with that weapon, right, until it becomes full strength or something,
Yeah. You could even just say you aren't as confident doing this because you're not familiar with it. Yeah. I mean, the first time you handle a saw, like let's say a reciprocating saw, the first time you handle one of those things, you're just like, oh god, oh god, oh god, and then after that you're putting your hand next to the blade, holding it and sawing stuff in half. You have to get comfortable with it.
So a few comments from chat. Celan Diloc says, learn to use a spell as you use it during gameplay. Definitely. And Fubarbox says, it would be cool if you got a new spell, and then you could go into the world and use it at high fizzle rate, or go complete a quest based on the skill, and upon completion you will start at a much lower fizzle rate, but that might take too many resources to do this for a bunch of skills. So you can either go and buy it and you have a higher fizzle rate, or you go and do a quest and your fizzle rate gets a bit lower. What do you think about that idea?
Well, same thing would be like the same with the proficiency idea, right? So you could either just obtain it and start using it, but you're not going to be very good at it, or you can go to a trainer, learn it, do a quest to teach you about it, study it, and everything, and then you would be more apt to use it.
See, I agree with Asmodeus here. There is a very fine line between
that's true. I mean,
fun realistic and realistic bad.
Yeah.
Like, say I don't get to play for a week and all of a sudden my skill degrades in the game, I'm gonna be like, screw this, uninstall, because I have a hard enough time dedicating my time to keeping my skills up with the 17 programming languages I use. Yeah. And then on top of that, I have to maintain 75 different skill sets to my character. Hell no. But there is a point where you can become somewhat realistic, but still keep it fun. And that's done by branching out in options and gaining things rather than taking stuff away. So, like, we'll say blunt weapons, or just weapons in general. So your slashing weapon just means, or skill means you're familiar with slashing weapons. But maybe it still takes a little bit for you to handle a new one. And that could be something linked to the weapon itself or the item. But that's not to say if you stop using this rapier and pick up a sledgehammer, all of a sudden, a week down the road, you can't use the rapier. Because you've put the time in, don't take it away.
Yeah.
Leave it like that. That gives you the feel of, I have to get to know my weapons or my items or my armor. So it gives you that little bit of realism where you're like, new hammer. Okay, it doesn't handle quite like I expect. Okay, makes sense. And so that's somewhat realistic, and then you can just say, well, you may retain that knowledge to the rest of your life. That's fine with that item, perfectly fine. Not quite realistic, because if I stop using a table saw, I'm going to forget how to turn the damn thing on, right? But this is a game. You're meant to have fun. You're meant to be gaining, not losing.
So,
it gives you just more things to do. That's all. I'm not saying that it's going to be like a hindrance or whatever, but it's like, okay, I obtained this new sword or this new spell. Let me go kill 20 mobs real quick so I can be proficient in it, or something. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it gives you something to look forward to. That's all. It's not going to hurt you or hinder you in any way. It just makes it that much better. Maybe you get a +2 bonus because you're proficient in it.
Yeah. So Dark Soul has a thought as well. And he would like to see a different approach to gaining spells. So you get a new spell slot at X level. Your trainer gives you a blank scroll that would capture a spell so you could use them. You then have a perception of 2-3 mobs that have a spell your class can use. Then you have to choose one, find that mob and use the scroll while in combat this mob to capture the spell. And then successfully defeating the mob, you can learn this spell. What do you think about that idea, guys?
It's something very interesting. I think VR should consider something akin to that. At least play with the idea.
It's similar to what you would do in the Final Fantasy games.
Mhm.
You could use the function of steal, and then you could steal an item or steal a certain attribute from the monster that you could then use for the period of the fight, or even learn it for the long haul.
Yep. Like the hardest part that I think VR is going to have here is, we'll take two people from the opposite spectrum. Say one person likes just buying from a vendor or getting it when you level because it's convenient and they don't have a lot of time. There's nothing invalid about that at all. Perfectly valid reasoning. And I support it 100%. On the other side, you've got other people who are tired of the convenience to an insane point and just want to feel a little more like they've earned it, which, again, perfectly valid. Nothing wrong with that. So meet them halfway. But the hard thing for us is we have to be able to accept, I have to give a little bit to take a little bit. I have to be willing to say, okay, yeah, this is a little more convenient than I want, but you have to be willing to recognize it's not crazy convenient to the point where I'd be like, oh, this is garbage.
Yep. So, Kodiak, you got anything to add to that idea from Dark Soul?
No, I mean, like, it's gonna be a balancing issue. Giving people, like, you don't want to make it too easy and you don't want to make it too hard, and that's where they have to, figure it out.
So I think we'll move on to the next forum topic, and I'm just going to go quickly post the link to the current one. So if you guys have any thoughts on spell drops or whatever, you want to participate, I've put the link into chat for you guys to go and pull it up and give your thoughts on the discussion that's going on. Plenty of ideas there. And the next topic is proposal for unique mobs. And this is from Humperding. Imagine a dragon's lair. The mighty dragon Sanopus is residing there, watching over his treasure. One night, an organized force of heroes comes to his home, slaughters him, and gets the treasure. One day later, the dragon is somehow resurrected with all his treasure, and the next band of adventurers comes slaying him. This is how EQ and most of the MMOs have been working for most of the time. I am proposing an alternative. After the dragon Sanopus got slayed, there was a vacancy, an unused dragon lair. Shortly after that, another dragon finds his way to the most comfortable space. Or maybe the next one occupying this spot is not a dragon at all, but a powerful Lich. Emperor Crush of the Crushbone Orcs got murdered. Well, that obviously means that the Orcs need a new leader. Welcome, Empress Krugal. With that method, new mobs can be easily introduced to spice up existing zones. Loot can be more varied, or it can be very similar. I would love to have a system like that. It's kind of what we were talking about on our shows, having, the dynamic encounters, like for instance when it snows, the orcs go in, pick up their camps and disappear to the south. They migrate somewhere else to where it's a bit warmer, and then the goblins come in, the ice goblins come into that area. It's kind of what we talked about. And it's definitely an interesting topic, and VR actually got into this one. Zippy Z, does it need to have a different name? Can it have the same name but potentially different behavior? This is a quote. If players have some sort of perception skill and we want to encourage the use of perception, then we should be able to mix it up a bit from encounter to encounter, and have the possibility of players recognizing that the behavior will be different without needing to change the name. But some players may prefer predictability on certain boss mobs, so it is possible that it might not be as fun as it sounds. There are the kinds of things that we will look at and perhaps play around with. There's also the possibility of having several named mobs that can spawn randomly at the spot, which is something that many games do to some degree. For the longer view of having an empty layer and creatures infiltrating it, that's certainly in my thoughts as an MMORPG mechanic, but it may not be right to fit this game, at least right now. So they're definitely considering these options, suggestions that were made and discussed in the forums, and what we've talked about, having random spawns of, let's say for instance they have 5 possibilities. You could have a dragon spawn, you could have an ogre spawn or whatever, etc., etc. And it's definitely interesting. what's your thought on it, Lex? We'll kick off with you about
As a
unique
developer,
mobs.
as a developer, doing it zone wide, it is putsy work, but it is easy because you just basically save basically mob sets. The spawns would be the same, you know, all the spawn points, all the patrols, everything would be essentially the same. You would just be saying this mob is now this.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of work. I'm saying it's not. So, you know, guys at VR, please don't start throwing paper at the screen going, boo, Lexer. It is a lot of work, but it's not that difficult. Yeah, doing it on world bosses would be much easier and a very good start. I love the idea of both of them because that's, again, variety. Variety is the spice of life, and I suffer from gamer ADD. So any variation that you can give me in the same area will keep me there longer. Mm-hmm. You know, the same thing over and over bores me to tears.
See, and I've got, for both of those things, I think that the boss mobs or raid mobs, I think that disposition should play a huge role in it, because if you come to kill that mob and you're, let's say, caster heavy, right, then I would think that that mob would take a bully role because, I'm gonna be real aggressive on these guys are weak, you know, whatever, I can just out DPS them, right? But if you come to that mob with tanks and rogues and, you know, massive DPS, they're gonna be like more of a guardian, and they're going to shelter in, so their disposition should change, dictated by the members of the group that are attacking them. Okay, yeah. So that's A, and that should be able to change up the dynamic of every encounter, first off. The second thing is the random spawn generator. I hate when people camp names. That's like the worst thing ever. I want it to be random. I want it to be, I mean, not random as far as like whatever, but if they said there's 3 orc camps, you don't know which one orc camp the name's going to spawn at. You don't know what tent. You don't know what this. You know what I'm saying? It's random, yeah. And it could be he spawns at the same 2 different camps at the same time. You don't know. I mean, that's what keeps it interesting. Yeah, I mean,
that makes a lot of sense, because let's say you're a bandit. You know, you've got your own little group. You're at a tent in the woods. You know, you're going to plan your next heist, and someone comes up and wipes you guys out. Well, you know, we'll just assume that someone gets away, you know, keep a little storyline here. Who's to say you're not going to move camp? Mm-hmm. I would.
Yeah.
If you get reinforcements, then you got 2 camps. It makes perfect sense to me. Yeah. And it changes the world a little bit to where you're like, it's not always the same. I don't walk into the same forest at the same spot and see the same thing.
I mean, even the behavior system. Just adding the behavior system to an encounter.
Dispositions.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, having the you know, the alarmist, the brute guy. It's you'll go into this fight today. You'll go into the dungeon or to the raid or whatever. You'll approach this monster, and after realizing, hey, he's an alarmist, he's calling, you know, reinforcements. You think, hey, this guy calls on reinforcements. 2 days later down the road, or a week later, or whatever. You go back in, then you go, right, this is how you go about this guy. Because this time, he's now using a complete different behavior.
Well, not only that, because you brought different members to the second raid. So depending on who you bring to the raid or to that encounter, changes the disposition of the boss.
And you'll never have this, you know, I know exactly what he's going to do. Obviously, to some encounters, it has to be simple. It's just the way it is. You know, they can't all be like this, but it has to
fight for your life.
Yeah, not everybody's a fan of having to figure out stuff. Some of them have to be, you know, go in there. Okay, we figured it out. We know exactly what he's going to do when. It's a DPS fight. It's a slow fight, etc. Obviously, that's going to play a big part in the game as well. But having encounters out there with this possibility just makes it for so much more fun. Because if you're going to go and run a dungeon with your guild, with a group, with you know, do it with, you know, a bunch of friends, more, you know, because you have to go in there for a quest, or you have to go in there for your epic quest. Going through it 20, 30 times, after about the 10th, 15th time of going through it and knowing exactly what's going to happen, you get bored. And it's good fun.
So that's what I said about making that epic mob, or that epic thing that every gamer wants to you know, that's what they were talking about in the beginning, right? Is this is a way to make it so that you can never learn exactly what that mob was going to do. Because based on, I mean, I guess unless you brought the same exact people to the same fight every single time, then it would stay static. But the minute you change out one cleric for a druid, it now changes the mob's perception of that group and changes his disposition of how he's going to fight that fight.
Right. And I mean, like, let's look at Elder Scrolls Online. They do something, or they've claimed to do something similar, where mobs work together. You know, one guy's an archer, puts down oil, and someone else lights it on fire, and it causes an AE fire field. That's good, but it's the same crap over and over again. Now, if you randomize the dispositions of just regular mobs, I'm not saying raid mobs because that doesn't make sense. Raid mobs are a unique entity, and their mentality should always be constant. You know, a lich is still going to want to melt your face regardless if you have more rangers than shamans, no matter what. But all his little minions and stuff, you know, because you go to the first little alcove in his tunnel and there were 2 tanks, a healer, and a conjurer or whatever, doesn't mean that's what's going to be there the next time. You know? So that changes the aspect of it, forcing your encounter to be different, to make you feel a little excited because things are happening differently. Yeah. And because they're going to have a wide range of dispositions for mobs, I'm just like vibrating with excitement because I want to get in there and fight. I want to see what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's like having, you know, your trash monsters. Let's say for instance you got a square block, and around that is you have to run around that square block, and on each corner is your trash mob. Before it unlocks the door, you got to kill all 4 monsters. Unlocks the door. There's the raid boss. Now, instead of having, you know, all 4 mobs there in the corner every time, if you go and change it out and say, right, there's only going to be 2 this time in there, but they're a bit tougher. It makes you go, hang on a minute, weren't there 4 in here last time? What's going on? Right. Don't change the dynamic to the raid mob, but you change the dynamic within the trash as well. It's kind of interesting. Definitely, I could see that spicing up things and making you go, hang on a minute, have we done something wrong?
Well, as a seasoned raider, that makes me super excited because that just means my raids now are not going to be the same old garbage day in and day out.
When that raid mob calls for reinforcements at a certain percentage or whatever, just, you know, it may be 2 awesome guys or it may be 7 little weaklings, you know, but it just changes it up. You don't know what's coming through that door to come help him, you know?
Right. Yeah. And that way you're not stuck doing the same raid, basically structure, you know, which is in EverQuest was you got your warrior main tank, you've got like 2 off tanks, the rest is just DPS and healers. That was what you had almost every time.
Yep.
This way it's like, well, you know, we've got a couple extra warriors. I just think
let's pick them up.
In anything, whether it's a named fight or a raid mob, making it static makes it boring. That's the bottom line. That's the consensus, right? They have to figure out a way to spice it up to keep it interesting, not changing it so much that it's so difficult that you can't go in there prepared. But as far as little tiny unexpected moments throughout the fight would be exciting. That you have to adjust.
And as a longtime raider, let's face it, you spend 90% of your time on a raid killing trash mobs, going from boss to boss. If that's the interesting part, you're going to have a better time overall. Now, like I said, raid bosses, I could see them swapping out different ones because maybe there's a dragon in this tunnel and not a lich this week. You know, that's cool. I like that.
All right, let me set up.
Every time we're fighting that dragon or every time we're fighting that lich, it should be similar. Very, very similar because it is technically the same entity. You know, because you're fighting Bruce Lee, he's going to be kicking a lot. Doesn't mean that next week you're fighting Bruce Lee, he's deciding to pull out a machine gun. You know, no, because Bruce Lee is a martial artist. He's going to sit there and whoop your butt personally. It's just how he is, and that's how raid bosses I feel should be.
But the topic was still having unique mobs. But
yes.
Anything else to add to?
It should change.
Anything to add to this, guys? Otherwise, we'll move on to the latest screenshots, and then I think we'll wrap it.
No, like I said, I just think the spawn generator, the random spawn generator, when it comes to mobs, moving mobs in and out, like we talked about, like orcs go south for the summer and ice goblins come in. I mean, just anything like that to make it change up unique mobs.
Yep. Definitely an interesting thought in the forums. If you guys agree or disagree with it, or have another idea you would like to see, I'll post a link to that topic as well for you guys to add your comments or whatever if you're interested in doing so. So we'll go and move on now to the latest screenshots. There isn't many. One you've already seen. I'll bring it up right now. That was the first one with the little village in the woods where we messed up the, or where I messed up the tweets that related to that. So it's basically, seems to be a little village in the woods somewhere. I'd say maybe Avendir's Pass and whatnot. Looks kind of cozy. You've got a long hut by the looks of it here on the left, and then a smaller hut in the background there. I don't know what else there is to see.
To be honest, it almost looks abandoned.
It certainly does. It looks like there's nothing going on there at the moment. Maybe, you know, it could be like that. Next screenshot is this one here. And my first thought to this was actually what we were talking about, the outposts and campsites. So my first thought was, is this a possible campsite that we could put down as players, or an outpost what we could put down? But it's only cosmetic at the moment. It has no relation to being a campsite or an outpost, but it looks pretty cool. I like the tents and the fire and kegs put there. Looks pretty interesting. Did you get the screenshot of Wild's End? I'm about to bring that one up. I think it's this one anyway.
Well, with the campsite one, it's hard to see because it's not pitch black, but the lighting from the fire looks great.
Yeah, certainly does. So I'll bring up the last one. I think it's this one here with the fancy trees and everything with the crystals. That looks. I think that's a different shot from the one they posted a few weeks back. Maybe from a different perspective, where they had that log at the front leading up to there. It looks definitely interesting. Some kind of ruins, or could also be a possible start of a city or whatever. Definitely looks interesting. I like the crystals on that. Pretty cool. So those are the latest screenshots that we were fortunate to all receive via Twitter, newsletter, etc. So we're going to our closing thoughts, closing statements for today's show, and then we'll wrap the show and see you guys on Thursday. So let's start with you, Lex. Your closing thoughts for today's show?
Well, closing thoughts would have to be that I'm super proud of the community. We're seeing a lot of really good ideas on the forums. We're seeing less and less trolls, which does my heart a lot of good. Because let's face it, as a community, as people who are interested in Pantheon, even if we don't agree with stuff, we have to be willing to give it a chance, because it's not about you, it's not about me, it's about us. We have to try and find a nice middle ground for everybody so that we all have a good time together. And things have been improving steadily, nonstop on the forums. And like I said, I couldn't be prouder of everybody. It's wonderful.
Can't really add to that, can you? I think he's made a nice, wonderful closing statement. But I'll leave the word to you, Kodiak.
Sorry, I was interrupted.
No worries, man. Your closing thought.
Just, you know, once again, we're all just excited for Pantheon. We just need to keep it positive and keep, you know, checking the forums, updates, newsletters, all that stuff.
Cool. Well, I can't really add any more to what these two have said. Absolutely right. It's been a blast. The community is really starting to come together, and you know, there's been some really cool ideas the past couple of weeks that we've talked about on our shows and everything. It's been really fun to see all these ideas come together. You know, post more like that, guys. You know, post ideas out there. We'll grab them. We'll put them on the air. We'll talk about them, and maybe even speculate on some of them, because there's certainly valid ideas out there. I mean, Lawkeeper, just as one, was a great topic to talk about, and so were these today. So with that, guys, we'll see you on Thursday. What we're going to talk about, I don't know yet. We will have to see what we come up with. So we'll see you all on Thursday. Take care.
All right, see you then,
Bye-bye.
guys.